Folks, it's humbling to be here. I was going to start with it's how great it is to be here. It's humbling. It's a real honor. I can tell. No, I can feel that each and every one of the people that are here have been personally touched by suicide. I can feel that, and so I think we're here to talk a little bit about service. I'd like to talk a little bit about communication. And that service, I think, is something that we as service members and we as activists here trying to reduce or maybe even eliminate suicide across this land, I think we're a little bit qualified to speak about service. How fortunate are we that we are in the business of service? The ability to uplift others and help them achieve the best that they can be and all that they can be. I would argue that service is much higher than any level of academia that we could achieve or education. I would argue that service is much more important to our existence here than any amount of money that we could ever achieve. I would say that giving that helping hand, uplifting somebody else, identifying somebody in crisis, somebody in need, is far more important. So again, I'm humbled to be here with such an esteemed group of folks who are incredibly bent on doing the right thing and helping others. I'm very fortunate I'm able to do this after stumbling my way into the Marine Corps as a geography major at Joe's College, as I referred to my school, and had a wonderful, a fabulous career in the Marine Corps, developing things like honor and teamwork and commitment to getting the job done, completing the mission, Marine, do what Marines do, and get the job done. And in an afterlife, which is where I'm at now, I get to continue that role as somebody in service, somebody who is really geared on developing and implementing programming for our veterans. The kind of programming that really is hard to find in the VA, the Veterans Administration. I'm able to do this, however, in large part because of that organization, the VA, who frankly has taken very, very good care of me and my family as I've transitioned out of the military and into the civilian sector. The VA is something that is incredibly necessary in our plight here today. Unfortunately, they're just not working efficiently for what our cause is here, and that is stemming the tide of suicide, not just in our civilian ranks, but also in our veteran ranks, as the previous speakers have mentioned. There are 25 million of us out there, 25 million veterans. There's less than 300 million people in the entire nation. 25 million veterans. 8 million veterans are enrolled in the VA. 6.2 million veterans are receiving health care services. Okay? I will tell you that those health care services in many cases are first rate. The VA spends an incredible amount of your money, taxpayer money, to run an incredible amount of facilities, hospitals and clinics across this country, and they do a pretty darn good job of taking care of those traditional health care needs of our veterans. Again, I'm one of the lucky recipients that's able to get to a VA facility that isn't walking around with unseen physiological wounds of a battle-stressed environment. So there's 6.2 receiving healthcare services, 8 million enrolled, 25 million. That leaves 17 million veterans that are out there, 17 million across this land. And certainly, and maybe even probably, there's a large proportion of those 17 million that are doing well. They're doing fine. They've transitioned into other careers. They have retirements, they have pensions, they have other resources, and they're doing just fine. But if only 10% of those 17 million are out there and left to their own devices and unable to communicate or unable to travel to a VA facility or just plain scared of the bureaucratic red tape that's involved with being involved with the VA, the reasons for avoiding the VA are plenty. It's a tough thing to navigate, especially on your own. So if the number's only 10%, that leaves 1.7 million of us across the country that are in need of those services and being connected to our services and benefits provided by the VA. That's what makes this organization, this event, this happening so incredibly important. It's the community partners that are out there that are doing the right thing and have been doing the right thing for decades. That's what we specialize in the Panhandle of Florida at the Center for Strategic Military Excellence. We're there to develop programming and bridge the gap between other resources and connect veterans to their services and benefits at the VA. Communication is key, absolutely key. Redundancy doesn't help. We need to be able to energize each other and communicate with each other, share the stories, share contacts. The issue with the government is this: it's communication. If we can't expect the DoD, who of course we require that they provide a force and readiness to protect us and defend our freedoms, if we can't expect the VA, to provide the types of services that allow returning veterans to do the transition, get the counseling, get the treatment, and transition back to their families and reassimilate into our communities to be successful members of society, then we're falling short on the promise of that returning when they come back after serving. So communication is key. Why aren't we expecting the DoD, to communicate with the VA? Every single military base that's out there has a PSD. That's a personnel support detachment. Every single one of those detachments generates documentation that orders our veterans home, orders them to go home. We are all ordered to go home. Return to your families, find a job, find a career, and become productive members of society by bringing those traits to bear in your respective communities. Why is it so that those personnel support detachments are not communicating with organizations like ours to tell them that they're coming? We have 16,000 returning veterans coming back to the Panhandle of Florida, and there isn't a single agency, including Biloxi, Mississippi, which is the headquarters for our Gulf Coast VA, there isn't a single organization, non-governmental organization, charitable organization, that receives any information from the DoD telling us that they're coming. If we just had that information, we could reach out to them. We could ask them how they're doing. We could suggest that they go to the VA and get connected to their services and their benefits. Get a needs assessment. A needs assessment is something that takes a long duration of time when you're talking about the physiological effects of combat stressors and long duration of time living with fear, incredible fear. Fear of dismounted patrols day in and day night. Fear of kicking in the doors for months at a time, wondering when that IED is going to go off. Wondering when your friend is going to take that round. Or wondering when that explosion is going to leave you a single, a double, maybe even a triple amputee. Or worse yet, with massive traumatic brain injury. These are the kinds of things, the fear, that trigger these physiological impact on our returning veterans. So we should expect more in communication. We should demand that we have information when our returning veterans are coming home. A message to the veterans that are out there and listening to this. Mental health is the second largest area of illness for which Iraq and Afghanistan veterans are seeking treatment. It's only second to orthopedic issues, and it is gaining rapidly, more rapidly than those orthopedic issues. Delays in treatment for veterans lead to things such as alcohol abuse, drug abuse, homelessness, incarceration, social misbehavior. The stigma attached with this has got to be torn down, as previous speakers have mentioned. We've got to tear down the stigma that it is bad or wrong or somehow emasculating for a veteran to go up and say, I'm having issues transitioning back. So I say to all veterans out there are millions of Americans that are affected by PTSD, by all kinds of events, having nothing to do with combat operations. That there is no shame in acknowledging the impact of the things that you've seen and witnessed and experienced on the battlefield. that you are responsible to yourself, your loved ones. Frankly, you're responsible to this great nation to acknowledge the impact and seek help. What will your action of suicide mean for your loved ones that I'm staring at right now? How will it impact your mother, your sister, your brother, your grandmother, your grandfather? Stay selfless, veteran. You were selfless on the battlefield. You were selfless in your courageousness and your bravery in protecting your fellow warrior on the battlefield. Stay selfless now. United States Navy SEAL Mr. Jim Hatch said, after getting shot on the battlefield in Afghanistan, he said for his fellow veterans, "Don't be so arrogant. Seek help." A message to the business leaders out here and that are listening. This is the longest conflict in our nation's history. Our veterans have served us well, but the task at hand for them transitioning home is monumental, with an economic and employment landscape that is abysmal. And we have 1 million unemployed veterans today. I think we can all agree that lack of purpose lends to this social and mental breakdown that adds to the set of circumstances that brings somebody to their darkest hour, to the brink of taking their own life. We cannot do it alone, business leaders and corporate executives. It is time for the change in core principles that guide our free market system. It is time to expect more from the corporations and the shareholders that benefit so much from the blood, sweat, and tears of our veterans on the battlefield. It is time for a new vision, a new capitalism that regards our humanity and our environment as much as it does the bottom line.